You've all heard the statements before. Your favorite thing, be it wargaming, board gaming, or whatever other geeky thing you're into, and more importantly, the community that surrounds that thing is deeply toxic and problematic. You know, maybe that information came from a video from a known content creator, or a scholarly journal article, or a news outlet, or maybe it just came from some forum post you remember reading. In any event, the premise is always exactly the same. Because a select few people say something or do something that the writer disagrees with, the entire community has a toxicity problem that you specifically have to deal with and call out if you want to be a proper ally and fan. I'm focusing primarily here on tabletop gaming, both board gaming and wargaming, but really my feelings on this issue can be applied to any sort of hobby or fandom. I mean, if I went through every article suggesting that gamers, Star Wars fans, or Marvel fans, or whatever fans were toxic, I would spend my entire lifetime just buried in hacky prose, overly dramatic personal stories. Hell, if you're a Warhammer fan, you've experienced this type of content for decades. I'm focusing on this issue because I recently watched a video from a YouTuber called Tabletop Minions, who I'm still subscribed to and who I still think makes really solid content. His video was primarily about the concept of hobby tourism and how it doesn't exist. That's a whole different issue that requires a discussion because I don't think he really engages with it, honestly. But in the video, he does mention a few reoccurring bigger concepts like gatekeeping and just general toxicity within the community that I really wanted to reply to. And so I'm really only using that video as a springboard for a broader topic that has bothered me for years. I mean, pretty much ever since I got into this hobby. And it seems to come up every few months in some form or another, basically just lambasting the communities and the hobbies that I love. My last video had me ranking miniature war games, and man, there was a ton of pushback in the comment section. Hell, I had to delete like 4 or 5 comments because instead of the usual disagreement, which is totally fine, some of them were just like attacks on me as a human being. I could sit here and pretend like the Warhammer community has this like deep-seated toxicity problem because they mostly came from Warhammer fans, but that's bullshit. That's bullshit. I love that people get passionate enough about something to act as though, you know, I've just told them their child has a funny shaped head and smells bad. I respect that. I think it's cool. And in a little disagreement, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But there's an important question you should always ask when presented with the argument that the community is toxic. Compared to what? So you think the board game community is toxic because you think you overheard some players saying something bad about someone or some group, or maybe you think they were mean or dismissive to you directly. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'm not discounting your experience, but what is the community we are using as comparison to be the sort of pinnacle of cooperation and positivity that all other communities should aspire to be? There's none. There's none. No community will be free of bad actors. Hell, I play a lot of Stardew Valley, and I can point you to some pretty dreadful interactions between people on the forums in that game. And that's a damn game about cute little farm animals, okay? The fact is that none of these outlets and individuals making this argument will ever state the gold standard because no community is perfect. And that's not their goal in making the claim that a miniature gaming or board gaming community is toxic. Well, while some may have good intentions, I would argue that many don't. They create the concept to generate clicks and views. Because what happens is they'll get people who strongly disagree to watch and then angrily reply, and they'll get the select few individuals who have had bad experiences to agree and express their views. All of this feeds that like algorithmic beast and elevates the notion that these communities are toxic to a level they shouldn't occupy. It has been and always will be a gross exaggeration of the truth. And if you ever ask for evidence to support this claim of toxicity, you'll get the odd forum post by someone you don't know saying something that's either bad or being dishonestly construed as bad. Imagine if we applied that same level of evidence to anything else. Imagine if I said an entire racial group or gender or religion has a toxicity problem because a select few individuals do bad things that are in no way tied to the tenets or beliefs of that group or culture. It would be an awful thing for me to do. And yet, for whatever reason, we seem to accept it when the same criticism is levied against the hobbies we love. More importantly, the community that we love. We say, oh, you think the Warhammer community is toxic because some people are upset by the inclusion of female space marines? Well, I guess I can just ignore any other arguments or why they're upset and just focus on the abundance of rage bait content by creators trying to get clicks to suggest that those people are representative of the entire community or what they believe is somehow intrinsically evil. But that belief, whether you agree with it or not, has no impact on the game or the community. As if any man or woman who is curious and friendly couldn't go down to their local game store to view a game and have a Warhammer fan just friggin' pounce on them in seconds asking if they wanted to play or learn the game with such like an overwhelming abundance of excitement that it would be absolutely frightening. Naturally, not everyone who has a conversation of toxicity within a community is condemning the entirety of the community as a whole. Yeah, I get that. And I'm sure most of those individuals are just trying to highlight behavior they find unacceptable. You know, you've heard it many times before. Such and such community needs to do better. Do better. It's a never-ending platitude at this point. Just do better.
You've got to do better, Senator. You've got to step up.
But I would argue most of the discourse surrounding toxicity within the community does attempt to malign the community itself and suggest that there is some problem inherent to the community. Or else, why use the community as a foundation for your argument? Yes, any given hobby, given enough time and growth, will reach a point where bad people are attracted to the space. Board gaming is pretty huge right now, right? So it's totally understandable that if you go to any given public board gaming night, you're going to encounter some sore losers and, you know, just otherwise dicks at the table now and then. Like myself, I'm one of those dicks who will attack you in every game I can until you hate me.
Can you imagine if my hand was there?
Yeah.
You guys hear that?
You feel the thunder? The bigger the community is, the more likely it is to draw in the crazies. That's true of every hobby, and so it doesn't really stand as a proper indictment of gaming specifically. And if anything, it's a detriment to your own personal enjoyment of the community. If you approach any community with the belief that there is an element of toxicity within it, you're priming yourself to find things that may not actually be there. You know, this sort of like confirmation bias on overload. And so these articles calling the community toxic could actively dissuade individuals from joining in the first place. Like, imagine if you and I are buddies, okay? And you're going to go to some board game group and that I've been to a few times. And I told you before, just before you went, I said, look out, there may be some assholes there. Board gamers, they can be creeps. Now I've planted in your head this overly negative attitude that, while it certainly could be true, is in no way indicative of the group as a whole. You know, I'm not helping you by saying that. I'm actually setting your expectations up for failure. And these people who harp on sort of like cherry-picked experiences, I think they do more harm than good too. I mean, seriously, do you think legitimate bad actors read the articles that you wrote or the forum posts that you wrote about how bad the community is, and then while reading say to themselves, you know what? I think they're talking about me. I'm an asshole. I got to do better. No, that's not happening. Like, okay, my first experience with board gaming, at least in regards to dealing with people who were not my friends within the hobby, was incredibly shitty, super shitty. Like, okay, story time. We have a local gaming store here, okay? It's located downtown. I won't give you the name of it for obvious reasons. That people seem to either really love or just absolutely despise. I went to this store almost 2 decades ago when I first started board gaming. Pretty seriously, I wanted this new game people were all talking about called Ticket to Ride. You know, maybe you've heard of it. I tried to find it and I couldn't for the life of me locate it in the store. And the store was kind of a mess. You know, there was just shit everywhere. I figure I'll ask a sales associate, right? So I get to the counter and the guy is talking to some other dude about Magic the Gathering. You could tell they're like super passionate, enthusiastic. So I give it a couple minutes, right? Like I'm Canadian, so I'm trying to be polite here and not interrupt. But eventually I have to jump in, right? I got places to be. So I ask them nicely if they have it, right? The dude looks at me and says, we're talking about a real game here, and it was rude of you to interrupt. And just goes right back to talking to the other guy, who admittedly looked a little surprised himself by that response. Needless to say, I bounced. I left the store, and I never went back because I found out that person, it wasn't an employee, that was the owner of the friggin' store. I had another bad experience when I went to my first gaming convention that same year at Can Games. I encountered 2 dudes, okay, who were kind of dicks. But that's a whole other story. And harping on the past here, it's not the point. Now, I could bemoan these encounters and pretend like they represent the average tabletop gamer, or that I was being gatekept from the hobby or whatever, and that gaming is obviously toxic and the community is toxic. But I didn't do any of that. I found a different store. I decided to go back to Can Games the next year, and both the store that I went to And the convention that I went to were amazing experiences. And 99% of the people I encountered were, some of them are my friends today. They were awesome people. In truth, tabletop hobbyists, be they board gamers or war gamers, are some of the nicest people I've ever encountered. I've gone to dozens and dozens of stores, and whenever I ask to view someone playing a tabletop game, you can damn well bet that not only will they say yes, they will ask if I want to play and learn within like a few minutes of watching. When I went to some local group to check out the miniature game Infinity, I came with nothing, no miniatures. By the end of the night, people were letting me play their armies and teaching me all the damn rules they can shove into my head. One of them even gave me half of his Kit Kat bar. Half of his Kit Kat bar. If I go to any random board game convention and I ask if I can join in on a game, unless they're full, they will almost never say no. That is true at Origins, that is true at Gen Con. Hell, I bet I could show up to some random person's house who I know is having a game night because I watch them through their window at night and I see them in their living room playing, and I go and knock on their door and I ask to play. I would bet they say yes. I would bet they say yes. They say, come on in, have a beer, play a game with us. Board gaming and wargaming has always been inclusive. We want everyone playing the games we love. There isn't an ounce of toxicity within these communities. The truth of the matter is that in any hobby, you're going to find an abundance of passionate people. The more passion those people have for the cultural products they love, the more fervently they're going to defend them from criticism. And you know what? I don't think that's toxic. I don't think that's toxic either. It's not toxic to tell people they're wrong when they say a game is bad. My comment section, like I said, my comment section in my miniature game tier list was filled with people telling me I'm wrong or how I have bad taste. Do I view that behavior as toxic? Hell no. To me, it's all in the realm of discussion and disagreement. And I don't want people watching my videos and just agreeing with whatever crap comes up out of my mouth, right? Like this video included. So if you're new to gaming and this is one of the first videos you've ever seen on the hobby for some strange reason, don't be afraid, okay? Of all the crap out there telling you, the Warhammer fans are toxic or board gaming people are toxic. It's all nonsense. If you're not comfortable dealing with strangers, you buy a starter set or whatever board game tickles your fancy and you just force your friends to play with you. If you're a little more extroverted or you're trying to be extroverted, you find your local game store, check their page for events because I guarantee you they'll have some war games or board game events during the week. And if you bring your butt down there without knowing a damn thing, you will be greeted with some of the warmest, most passionate and helpful people you will ever meet who will be absolutely begging you to play because they want you in this hobby. I want you in this hobby. So that's the end of my rant. This is just a reply to a lot of the comments that I've seen over the years saying, this community is toxic and that community is toxic. And it's just bothered me. It has bothered me for so long. And they crop up all the freaking time. And I understand that, I understand that they mean well, but I don't see it doing more good than it does harm. So, but if you disagree with me, let me know in the comment section. That is all for today. Later.